Did you ever see a movie that had a ton of potential, but then went on to completely waste that potential? That's what 400 Days was. 400 Days is a sci-fi thriller that's just hitting video on demand now. And man, what a bummer. It was these 4 astronauts, and they were putting them inside this simulated space station. And while they were there, they were going to be there for 400 days, locked off from the rest of the world. This was a way for them to test the effects of isolation on long-term space travel and whatnot. Cool idea, but then the 4 astronauts get down into the fake spaceship, and it looked really fake. I don't know what the budget was, but everything looked like it was from IKEA. And considering this was supposed to be a 400-day experiment funded by NASA, that they would have had a little more high-tech gear in there, or at least better stuff altogether. Everything just looked chintzy. It didn't really sell the idea that they were in this experiment. Unfortunately, to talk about it a little bit more, I have to get into some spoilers. So if you don't want it spoiled, tune out. But I kind of have to talk about this one. Okay, the experiment was taking place underground in this bunker. And while they're there, something happened to the outside, and they think it's part of the experiment. Well, as time ticks away, they're starting to lose oxygen. And at first, they think it's part of the experiment, but then they start to get nervous and think that something else is going on. They try to contact control, and they're not getting any response. So finally, it gets to the point where they're almost out of oxygen, and they have to leave the bunker. Now, the thing was, if at any point they left the bunker, they failed the mission, and they wouldn't be allowed to go into space, which is kind of what they were gearing up for. They get out of the bunker, and what's topside is not the way that they remember it. It's freezing cold, there's dust and dirt everywhere, and it's pitch black, and there's no moon. They travel around trying to find more information, and they find a map that leads to this town. So they follow it, and they get there, and there's a diner. And the guy brings them in, and there's a couple of people in there in the diner, and they're trying to get some information out of them, and stuff doesn't really work. And one of the astronauts starts to recognize some of the people in town. They look like the reporters that were interviewing them before they went into the bunker. So they start to think that the whole thing is just a sham, and basically they find out that there was a cataclysm. Something crashed into the moon and either blew it up or blew up a big portion of it, and it rained all kinds of moon dust and everything down on the planet, which is blocking out the sun and is making life very difficult. So these people that are living here have resorted to cannibalism, which immediately made me think of DEFCON 4, which was a movie where there were some astronauts that were in a space station flying around Earth, and World War III happened. And then the astronauts were staying up in space, but eventually they had run out of supplies, so they had to return to Earth. And when they return to Earth, they find a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and there are towns filled with cannibals. This felt silly because I kept watching it, and they were trying to make you decide, is this real? Is this fake? And honestly, I didn't care. It would have been much more interesting if they had just kept them in the environment and maybe had stuff go wrong in there and have them all kind of turn against each other and make it a little bit more of a psychological thing. But as soon as they left the bunker and went into town, it felt dumb. Brandon Routh was in the movie, and I thought that he was trying really hard to make it work, but it just wasn't there. Dane Cook was in the movie, and he played Dane Cook pretty much in an astronaut suit, which is funny because I've seen movies where he's acted well. He was great in Mr. Brooks, but here, again, there was nothing there. There was nothing to work with. It bums me out to say this because the movie had a lot of potential, but seriously, don't waste your time.